Yo, 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 what it do? What it be, y'all? It's your boy A&T repping the motherfucking game. Gang, you know we don't play none of that. If you a lame, you can't hang. All of that. Bang, bang. I'm back with my top five list, and this is going to be my top five centers of the 1960s. We're going decade by decade, figuring out who the top five centers are, and then we'll do a top five all-time centers list. If y'all missed my top 50 center or my top centers of the 1950s list, y'all go back and watch that. I'll leave an annotation. If y'all don't want to miss none of the center or the list that I got dropping, or none of the hot content that I got cooking and dropping soon for y'all, y'all can subscribe, ring the notification bell and all that below so y'all can stay tuned for that. I only got one honorable mention, so I'm going to get into that before I get into this top five. So in the 1960s, we started to see more teams in the NBA copy the Minneapolis Lakers blueprint and try to build their franchises around dominant big men. And it actually worked. Unfortunately, though, for other teams, it only worked for one team for that decade. And that, of course, was the Celtics. They won 9 of 10 championships in the decade. And we'll talk more about their dynasty a little later on. But just because other teams weren't good enough to beat Boston doesn't mean there wasn't other elite talent at center or even other elite teams at the time. So before we get into the top five, like I said, I have an honorable mention, and that is Jerry Lucas at 6'8". He was undersized as a center, but guys like him, Wes Unseld and Willis Reed would carve out these roles as undersized centers that could still be imposing on offense and defense, scoring, rebounding, and occasionally, still blocking the shots and still being tasked with being the best defender. That's what the center was, the last line of defense, at least in that era. And Jerry Lucas might be a power forward, or he might be considered a power forward if he played today. Kind of like guys like of that era, like Elgin Baylor was considered a forward, but his size might make him a guard or even possibly like a guard forward in this era. But Elgin Baylor was still a very good rebounder because he played that forward role. Now, guys like Bob Pettit and Dolph Schayes, they were not tasked with being the best defender or defending like the biggest, tallest, strongest guy like a Wes Unseld, like a Willis Reed, like other guys where they were better scorers than they were defenders, and I don't think that should be even a question. They were really good rebounders too at the same time, but again, that's what called for that era. The forwards were rebounding almost as well as centers, but Lucas was considered a center for his era, and he was a damn good one. I'm not going to take that away from him. He just missed being out on the top five. In the 60s, he averaged 19 points and 19 rebounds and ended his career with 17 points and 15 rebounds, for an average for his career. And in the regular season, those numbers dip, though. Those numbers dip to 12 and 10. Nasty work. I can't let that slide. And he averaged less than a block a game playing in an era with elite rim protectors. Even the other guys that I mentioned that were undersized, like Wes Unseld and Willis Reed, they averaged more blocks. So again, I got to kind of give him a knock on that because it's like they were the same size as you and still being better defenders at the time, measurably. And I mean, to caveat, or to kind of give it some leeway, they didn't start tracking blocks until 1972. So we don't really know how many blocks he really got, or any of these guys really got, at least in this era. But he was still an elite rebounder in the regular season, and he's top 20 still all time in rebounds. So I felt he deserved some shine on this list. I felt he deserved to get talked about at least and not be forgotten on the top five. Even though he's not on the top five, he, like I say, honorable mention for show. Shout out to Jerry Lucas for the honorable mention. Now let's get to the actual list, though. At number 5, I have Nate Thurmond, who averaged 15 points, 15 rebounds for his career and 2 blocks. Even though, like I said, it might have been more. The NBA didn't start tracking blocks until 1972, and I think around that time they implemented the goaltending rule. So They couldn't just wait for the ball to start coming down and just swat shit away. Like, no, they actually had to, the ball could not be falling. They had to block the shot before then. However, if they would have started tracking blocks in this era, then I have no doubt in my mind that guys in this era, damn near everybody on this list would be higher on the all-time blocks list, like without a doubt. Thurmond was an elite defender and rim protector. Unfortunately for Nate, though, his scoring and rebounding go down drastically in the playoffs like Jerry Lucas. But unlike Lucas, he played great in the finals, but never won a chip. Jerry got one in 73, but he wasn't really like the main. He wasn't really putting up all them numbers and stats like that. If the NBA would have kept track of blocks during this era, I have no doubt in my mind that everybody on this list damn near would be higher on the all-time blocks list. I mean, in my opinion, but I mean, without the goaltending rule, I don't see how they don't average more blocks, especially with the pace. Like, pacing was incredible, so I think they would definitely have more blocks. But despite Nate Thurmond being an elite defender and rim protector, his scoring and his rebounding go down drastically in the playoffs, just like Jerry Lucas. But unlike Lucas, he played really good, if not great, in the finals. I mean, Jerry won one in 73. Nate Thurmond never got a chip. But when Jerry Lucas got his chip, he was not like the lead player or the elite rebounder and center that he once was at that time. But his great defense, elite rebounding, and him being one of the only players in NBA history with a quadruple double, like, to me, that puts Nate Thurmond above Jerry Lucas and has him rounding out my top 5 of the 60s list. At number 4, we have Walt Bellamy, who also never won a championship with the Knicks. However, he was a phenomenal scorer and rebounder. Might be the second best scoring big man, I should say, of that era. He wasn't the defender or shot blocker that Nate Thurmond was or other guys on this list were, but what he lacked in defense, he more than made up for it with scoring, and he even averaged 13 rebounds for his career. And in the 60s, he averaged 23 points and 15 rebounds. And those numbers don't dwindle in the playoffs like Jerry Lucas and Nate Thurmond either. Like I said, though, Walt never won a ring. He was a 4-time All-Star, only a 4-time All-Star. But his teams were consistent playoff contenders thanks to his efforts. Unfortunately, though, he never even had the honor of playing in even one finals. Like, he never even saw him, didn't get to play at all or even try for one. He does hold the record for most games played in the NBA season at 88. So even though he wasn't the best defender on this list, he was a true Iron Man for his time. And his 14,241 rebounds ranks 12th all time, just under Nate Thurmond. And of course, he ranks above Jerry Lucas. All three of these guys are top 20 rebounders all time. And we only go up, I think, in this list. Oh, actually, it's a lie. The next one I don't even think is on the rebounding list. But all these guys were elite rebounders, especially for the pacing of that era. It allowed them to just rack up fucking rebounds. But, yeah, again, ranks, I believe he's 13th, just under Nate Thurmond. Nate Thurmond has like a couple hundred more rebounds. But again, Walt Bellamy is one of those guys that does not get talked about enough, but he has incredible highlights. Like, he was definitely a bucket getter and a mid-range shooter and all of that. Like I said, might be the second best scoring big man. And first, of course, is going to be later on this list. But like I said, we'll get to that. Before we get to that, we got to get to number 3. And at number 3, I got Willis Reed, who, like Jerry Lucas, was undersized at 6'9", but he was still a great center of his era and definitely a top 5 center of the 60s. He wasn't a better scorer than Walt Bellamy or as defensively imposing as Nate Thurmond. And hell, he's not even top 50 in rebounds all time. But Willis Reed in the 60s averaged 19 points and almost 14 rebounds. That's pretty consistent for his career until he tore his right thigh muscle in the 69 and 70 finals, and his numbers just fell off a cliff after that. Like I said, he was consistently a great scorer and defender, and that those skills paid off in the 70s when he won 2 finals and 2 finals MVPs with the Knicks. And even if he would have got those in the 60s, there are still guys that are just head and shoulders above everybody else in this era. And before I get to the top 2, let me just say, Willis Reed's 2 finals MVPs, I could maybe see one, but when he won those with the Knicks, just to put things into context, they also had Walt Frazier and Earl the Pearl Monroe, who were 2 elite guards during that time. Now, for that first ring, sure, you might be able to get the finals MVP because he was putting on before he got hurt. I'm not even going to cap. That second one, though, they carried him, and you can't even argue. They might have given it to him just because they wanted to, give the center it was a center's award. I don't know. But Walt Frazier and Earl Monroe, one of those 2 should have got that finals MVP. They played way better than Willis Reed in those finals. It's not even close. But as I was saying, there are 2 guys. Now, one stood over everybody physically, literally, and then the other one stood over everybody accolades wise, figuratively, And I'm gonna get some hate for this, I know it, but at the number 2 spot in the 60s, I got Bill Russell, y'all. And look, I know 11 championships during that era. There was no finals MVPs. Otherwise, Bob Cousy might have stole a couple, maybe even a few, because that era, for reasons, he may not have won some. Now, he might have won most of them, and that's undeniable because he was the best player on the Celtics. He's the reason why they got that. They was not winning before Bill Russell got there. I'll give that to him. Elite defender. His defense transcends generations, but he was very limited offensively. Very limited. But he had a Hall of Fame starting cast. Like the other 4 people that he was playing with were also Hall of Fame caliber players. They are literally in the Hall of Fame. So, I mean, do I blame Bill for that? Do I hold that against him? No. In his own right, he won 4 regular season MVPs in the 60s and 1 in the 50s, including 3 in a row. We wouldn't see another person win 3 MVPs in a row until Bird did it in the 80s. And like I said, his defense and rebounding was legendary. He had the ability to pass the ball out of the block very well for a big man of that era. He was also not afraid to get outside of the paint or outside of the blocked area and go out and try and block shots from 3-4s and even some guards. Like, Bill was one of those guys who was willing to step out and guard other positions and maybe get a block or 2 or get a rebound. Like, Bill Russell is one of the best defenders, if not the greatest defender of all time, you could argue. But like I said, when you play with a Hall of Fame cast, I mean, and you win 11 championships, is it your fault that you were the only team that wants to win? No. But I mean, he averaged 20 rebounds for over a decade. He led the league in rebounding 4 times, in rebounds per game 5 times. 5 times. 5 times. 5 times. 5 times. Boy, was Booker T with the rebounds. You feel me? But he was 7-1 against the man I have number 1 on the list in the playoffs when it mattered the most. But again, that's kind of a team thing. But again, it's not Bill's fault he played on the second dynasty of all time or in NBA history. If you look at past the championships though, and ignore those 11 rings, and you just compare Wilt and Bill's stats, man, that tells It tells a different story. And that's why my number one center of the 1960s is Wilt Chamberlain. I mean, yes, I know. Bill won more, and Bill has a winning record against Wilt. But statistically, Wilt outperformed Bill damn near every time. It's not even close. Wilt was outperforming him. Basketball is a team sport. It's not a one-man game or a one-man game. I'll admit that. But Wilt almost single-handedly was taking the Celtics to 7 games. And when he finally got some decent help, he won championships. But he was regularly taking the Celtics to 7 games. When he got some help, guess what? He swept him out the fucking playoffs. Swept him out. When Wilt finally bought in, and I know it's shitty caveat that Wilt wasn't buying into winning basketball games, because he was still making the most, if not some of the most top 5 most money in the league at the time. Bro didn't really care about winning because he was getting paid. And when he finally bought into championship basketball and bought into winning culture and being a good teammate instead of just being a scoring machine, he won. He won especially when he got to LA. He helped put them over that hump of the Celtics. But that, again, that's in the 70s. We won't even get into that. But again, Bill also had 4 other Hall of Famers, Wilt's best help was Billy Cunningham. And together they won Wilt's first championship against the San Francisco Warriors. He played against Nate Thurmond and beat him in the finals. And they also had Rick Barry. And then, of course, Russell and the Celtics, as I said, won the rest of them. But like I said, Bill Russell improved his stats. I'll even bring that up. Bill Russell's stats improved in the playoffs and even the finals. And even then, with Wilt's numbers taking a slight dip in the playoffs, they were still better than Russell's. Still better than Russell's. Just wasn't getting the dub. They wasn't losing games because of Wilt. Wilt was dropping like 30, 40 points against these boys. Average on the regular. Bill Russell himself has admitted that he could not guard Wilt Chamberlain one-on-one. They had to triple team him. Essentially, Wilt was the Shaq of his era. That's how dominant he was. He just never had the Kobe to kind of guide him, or not guide him, but help him get the rest of those championships and maybe even those accolades. But for his era, nobody one-on-one could stop Wilt Chamberlain. Like, we don't know how many blocks him and Bill would have got, because again, they didn't start tracking blocks till 72, and they implemented the goaltending rule around that time, so we don't know. But Wilt still finished with over 2,000 more blocks, and he's top 10 all time in points. I think he might just be out of the top 5. He might be like 7 or something, but still top 10 in points all time. I don't think Bill even cracks the top 50. Like, again, that's why I put Wilt over on offense and defense. He was the second best defender of his era, and he was the best scorer without a shadow of a doubt. And yes, Bill had the luxury of a Hall of Fame starting cast and arguably the greatest coach of all time. I mean, you put Red Auerbach up there with the Phil Jacksons and the Popoviches and even the Pat Rileys probably. But Wilt Chamberlain was such a dominant athlete to me that it supersedes championships. It's not Bill's fault he played with the only team trying to win championships. Like I said, he's the second best center of the 50s, and if you have him over Wilt at number 1 in this decade, I'm not mad. Somebody came in here with, well, Bill is better than Wilt. That's fine. You can't convince me of that. There's nothing you could pull up I know what you're gonna say. The 11 championships, all that. It doesn't mean anything to me. Wilt statistically was better than Bill Russell. And I hate doing the hypotheticals. If Wilt was on the Celtics and this and that, and Bill was on the other team, we're not even gonna play that game. Let's take it for what it is. Wilt didn't win as much as Bill, but statistically, he clears Bill in almost every category, or every category that matters. You know, and that's no disrespect to Bill. Bill was still a great defender. He would give in Wilt fits, and the only player that could probably get with him like that. But again, Wilt to me was just so dominant. I might be just a little biased. Even with you know, when Kareem broke Wilt's scoring record, he kind of became a hater, kind of like Shaq, talking about these new generation is whack and it's soft and this and that. I didn't even know that until I started doing this research. But I still got Wilt as the best center of the 1960s. And I mean, he in terms of the 60s, they didn't have finals MVPs. Like I said, Bill probably would have won most of them. Cousy might have stole a few just because, you know, there's obvious reasons why for that era they would have given Cousy some MVPs over Russell. But Bill and Wilt both won 4 MVPs in the 60s. So again, it's just one of those situations that you could pick one or the other and I wouldn't be upset. But saying that, like, Bill clears Wilt in any aspect other than winning, like, no. But hope y'all enjoyed. It's been your boy, ANT. Video's about to end. I'm out. Peace.